Good morning from Cornell University, upstate New York in Ithaca, where we had a number of very strong snowstorms earlier this week. Beautiful place, as always. On behalf of the Emerging Markets Institute and eCornell, welcome to the keynote with the title 2024 Emerging Markets Report, Innovation and Transformation to Emerge Stronger. The Emerging Markets Institute publishes a yearly report in collaboration with MNET from the OECD Development Center, Momina Yasuddin from IFC in the World Bank, Universidad de los Andes, Beneta Andonova and Juana García, Tec de Monterrey, Ricardo Buitrago, Zhengzhou University, Olivia Bu, and Nalin Singhal from India. Anne and I want to thank you all for your contributions, great contributions to the report and our yearly collaborations, and also the EMI team, the EMI summer interns, Avi Das, Gabriel Morales, Antonio Velázquez, Shalja Bangsha, Noel Liu, Dimitrios Neranzinis, Noel Liu, Kelly, and Cornell students who worked hard to help us with the data analysis. The support of the faculty, Dean Andrew Caroli, and members of the Faculty Advisory Council and EMI's Advisory Council are gratefully acknowledged. The report is EMI's most important research output and aims to be a space where we bring the economic and business voices from emerging markets. We will now present the first 5 chapters written by my colleague Anne Miru and myself. So, as we are reaching the end of the first quarter of the 21st century, last year and this year we started looking in these 9 reports that we have been publishing, and here the logos of all our partners. So we have been looking back what has happened in emerging markets in the first 25 years. So we see resilience within a new paradigm going forward. And this, if we take a look at what has happened in these first 25 years, the results are quite positive regarding extreme poverty, record low ever, increase in GDP per capita, reducing infant mortality, increasing life expectancy. So many of the economic and the average of the economic and business indicators are positive. Why is that? So we believe that while from 1800s to the 20th century, the emerging markets did not do well, since the year 2000, we see this period of optimism. Why? Number one, because we have the rise of China and later India and other emerging markets that has been overall positive for other emerging markets. My colleague Anne will talk more about innovation and technological capabilities, but definitely the mobile payments, the smartphones, all the unicorns we have seen in emerging markets have been a driver of a positiveness, and also the strengthening of the South-South relations and South-South groupings, and my colleague will talk about it as well. So, parallel to the economic growth, we have seen a growth of emerging market multinationals. This has been mainly Chinese. So if we look at the Fortune Global 500, we see a concentration in China and US. We had seen before this concentration in 2 countries in the 90s. US and Japan dominated the ranking. Now it's China and US. And last 2 years, the numbers went again. So US recovered the leadership. And now, the last one, we have 139 and then 120. So similar numbers of US and Chinese companies, with more US companies in this ranking. So these are the countries that are present in the Fortune Global 500, and we see that to have big companies is a rich countries game, and we see mainly China, that even if it's still a middle income, has many characteristics of a developed country. We see also representation from India, Brazil, Russia, Mexico, and then other emerging markets, Colombia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Turkey, with one each. We also expanded the ranking to look at the what we call the billionaire companies by revenues. And again, we see a similar pattern. We see more companies from Asia, and 48% of all the billionaire companies that we studied are from Asia, with China having 25% of the total. Then comes US and Canada, then Europe, Latin America, and far away, and Oceania and Africa. We have also studied over the years how these companies are going global. Here again, companies from emerging markets go global, but it's mainly China. So first, who are the top recipients, top countries that are recipients of foreign direct investment? We have China number 2 in 2023, and then we have also Brazil as emerging markets, Mexico, India, Argentina, Indonesia, and Chile. Then outward investors, of course, dominated by the US, is a very aggressive global investor, and China number 3. And also we have Brazil, Russian Federation, and also India. If we look at Greenfield, US Greenfield means new projects. US dominates, double the amount of China, if we look at since 2019. And yes, China had invested much less in the years 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. But then we saw both in Greenfield and in M&A that in 2023, China became much more prominent investor, but shifting the geographical focus from US and Europe to Asia and other emerging markets. We also have India, Russia, Malaysia, Thailand, and South Africa. Brazil was in the list as well, but has had a number of these investments in the last years, and hence is not among the 30th most biggest investors in Greenfield. If we look at M&A, we compare US with Europe and China. So China, again, much less, but China has made it to the 10 biggest investors in mergers, international investors in mergers and acquisitions, but of course at a much lower level. And we see 2022 going down, 2019, 2020, 2021, and then again, in 2023, we see these numbers growing again. US as a single country is obviously the leader. And the geographical focus that I mentioned before, you have in 2023, 34% of the investments in mergers and acquisitions going to Asia, while before you can see the red and the pink dominating that are US and Europe. So because of that, and because of the geopolitics that are becoming so prominent in the world, we see that the companies' drivers for internationalization will change. Companies will continue making sure that they have the natural resources they need, so that will continue to be a driver. We'll continue to look for markets for their products, and then we have Coca-Cola, we have Apple, we have Google, Microsoft that are very aggressive. And of course, we see the Chinese, Lenovo, Huawei, in spite of the sanctions, is in 170 countries. But the search for efficiencies are being questioned as a driver, because both US and Europe are asking companies to come back and in an effort to reindustrialize their own countries. There is a case of Apple that continues to manufacture the iPhones in China primarily, but also now in India, Vietnam, and other countries. So I'll pass now the word to Anne, who will talk about our ranking of E20+1.
Thank you very much, Lourdes, and I will definitely focus on chapter 4 and 5 of the report. But beforehand, a quick look at our list of E20 plus 1 in 2024. That list is a group of 20 emerging economies plus China that we use to illustrate the changes in the global economy. The list has not changed much over the year. The main change this year is that Nigeria is out. That reflects in a way the economic difficulties faced by the country over the past 2 to 3 years. And Nigeria has been replaced by Peru. Today, the E20 plus 1 account for about almost half of global GDP, and that compares to a third in 2000. So that shows definitely the remarkable rise of emerging economies in the global economy. We will skip the next one because I want to go to the key issue that Lourdes mentioned, that is the main message of the report, which is the role of technology and innovation behind this remarkable transformation of emerging market. The key driver, one of the key drivers behind it is technology and innovation. And advancement in this area definitely have provided a solid foundation for their growth and development, and to some extent given them the basis to withstand some of the crises, especially the last two ones. That's why, as Lourdes said, we have at least a relatively optimistic assessment of the past 25 years. In this process, digitalization has definitely been a game changer, expanding access to services, access to information, fostering innovation and entrepreneurship. One example is the rise of startups and unicorns that Lourdes mentioned from emerging markets that Lourdes mentioned. Definitely, digitalization has progressed rapidly in emerging economy, but now what about artificial intelligence, which is a key word in a way nowadays? And one of the essential questions as far as emerging markets are concerned is that will AI increase or decrease the digital divide? Next, actually, AI can act as a catalyst for accelerated development by enabling economies to leapfrog traditional barriers to growth. And it's already transforming sectors and industries in emerging markets, driving improvement in efficiency, productivity, accessibility, and so on. And there are many examples in agriculture, in education, logistics, and so on. And we give detailed example of such uses, but also we give example of companies from emerging markets that are developing a product and services based on AI. Next. Now, the potential is enormous, but there are challenges, and the challenges are definitely in infrastructure, in knowledge and skill, in access and availability of high-quality data. That is a challenge for emerging markets, where the availability, there are very often a lack of digitized record. And of course, last but not least, the need for regulatory framework and governance. And these are in emerging market unclear or limited. And by the way, it's not only, these issues are not only those of emerging market, but they are somehow more acute in a number of emerging and developing economies. Another challenge is, which is essential, we see it nowadays especially, is the geography of AI. It raises a challenge for emerging markets because there are two leaders, two nations, the US and China, and a few enterprises that dominate the sector. Now, whoever dominates will determine which industry are prioritized, what innovative capabilities are developed, regulation, how they involve, and ultimately how the needs and the concerns of emerging markets are addressed. Next. So we are in a new area. We are just at the beginning, and it's difficult to predict how things will evolve or what will be the next impact. And actually, Lourdes mentioned DeepSeek, but the launch of this Chinese model a couple of days ago suggests that AI models can be developed much cheaper, not requiring the tens of billions of dollars spent on the leading model. And this changes fundamentally the AI landscape. It can have an impact on the adoption of AI in emerging markets for two key reasons. One is cost effectiveness. DeepSeek has proved to be less expensive, and also the open source aspect. That would make advanced technology more accessible to smaller enterprises, startups, smaller academic institutions where there are budget constraints, and this is definitely the case of emerging and developing economy. So that really changes the landscape, and that's why I said, we are at the beginning and we have still to understand the changes, what are the impact of the technology changes, and it goes so fast. In any case, whatever the situation, there is a clear thing that emerging markets need to be better equipped to harness the potential of AI. And what's interesting is that there was a study by the Brookings Institute in 2023 of the 34 countries that had by that time a national strategy. Of these 34 countries, only 4 were emerging economy. So that really raises question for the future. I'll stop here and I will pass the floor now to Lorenzo.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Lourdes, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you. Mnet and the OECD Development Center are proud to be long-standing partners of the Emerging Markets Institute and the Cornell University. So as Anna said, this year's EMI report focuses on technology and innovation, and our chapter focuses on attracting investment to boost innovation in emerging markets. So our contribution explores how private investment, particularly FDI, can enhance innovation across emerging markets. Despite the immense potential for innovation in these regions, we notice that public funding for R&D remains insufficient for a number of reasons. Fiscal tight space, high interest rates at the moment, and growing public debt service is limiting the capacity of governments to provide additional investments for R&D. So consequently, attracting FDI can become a way to bridge this gap, especially in sectors like the digital technologies, but also others like green transition and agriculture. Foreign investment, in fact, can contribute to a number of can provide a number of positive benefits, such as enhanced productivity, innovation. It can help also domestic SMEs to grow through spillovers, through market interactions with the foreign investors. So as we can see in this chart, emerging and developing economies lag behind in public spending for innovation. So data from the World Bank in 2020, Latin American countries allocated an average of only 0.6% of their total GDP to R&D, while Africa spent 0.4%, significantly below the world average of 2.5%. So what about FDI in R&D? While investment from multinational enterprises can facilitate technology transfer, we said, benefiting the host country and boosting productivity. However, it represented in 2023 only 36% of the total R&D globally. So on a positive side, though, it's following an upward trend, as you can see also from the slide in the green line on the graph on the left, that went from 23% in 2020 to 36% in 2023, mainly thanks to FDI going to India. So in the period that we analyzed, 2020-2023, Latin America and Africa received a relatively smaller share of greenfield R&D investment compared to the other regions in emerging markets. Now, the other chart on the right-hand side of this slide shows how across emerging and developing economies, the digital sector attracted the highest capital expenditure in this period. So we see the main blue part is 38% is software and IT services, whereas 12% is related to communication. But even we have an additional 7% on semiconductors. They show, the importance of digital technologies for R&D investment. Next slide. So we asked our business platform, Emerging Markets Network members and partners, what are the conditions for private investment to enhance innovation in emerging markets. Now, what can be done? So according to them, emerging markets need to better allocate public resources, mobilize more private investment on a large scale, focus on finance and on productivity and better allocation of resources. We can say that in particular, emerging mechanisms like to scale up financing mechanisms are very important to create new ways to mobilize finance for investment and develop also new products like the famous social sustainability linked bonds that can secure additional channels for investment to foster social and economic innovation. It's important also for governments to promote well-functioning markets and lift barriers to competition. This is to attract more foreign investment, ensure that there is a stable regulatory framework that can help long-term investment, promote fair competition and a more predictable investment landscape, which in many cases has been flagged as a great barrier for long-term investments by foreign investments in this part of the world. Then obviously it's important to create the conditions for better spillovers, so strengthening the linkages between multinational companies and local SMEs that can also go into enhancing human capital development, which is the following point. So partnerships between educational institutions, government, foreign investors, domestic companies to align labor market to supply and demand. We had recently the International Economic Forum on Africa focusing exactly on this topic, on how to create the conditions for an alignment of demand and supply in the labor market to create more jobs in Africa. And the digital technologies were among those that were mentioned as a really important sector where more skills are needed. Hence also the focus on STEM education to support more human capital development. The final point I wanted to flag before we move on is the focus also on a specific sector, agribusiness, which is never considered or not always considered as a source of technology, but in reality, first of all, more investment in digital and innovation can help advance productivities, produce more data-driven decision-making, and also support better food security, particularly in areas, rural areas, and less rich regions. So I stop here and thank you, everyone, and now give the floor to Momina for her presentation.
Thank you, Lorenzo. And thank you to Lourdes and Cornell's Emerging Market Institute for always giving us a very valuable opportunity, actually, to sit and reflect about the work that we're all doing and really think about how innovation and transformation changes. The work we're doing in whatever field we're in, whether it's OECD, IFC, or academic universities, things change quite dramatically every year. So each year the report also looks dramatically different. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about, I work at the IFC, which is the largest development finance corporation, private sector focused arm of the World Bank Group. And we've spent the last 60 years really thinking about how to increase and mobilize the private sector in emerging markets. We've spent a lot of time, decades, in the MSME space as well, micro and small enterprises, and really thinking over in 100 countries, how do you really encourage entrepreneurship, scale, reach the poorest of populations, and aspire to a world which is free of poverty? So my presentation is really very much about that. I'll deliberately try and keep it less technical because you can read the technical aspects in the report itself. So if we could just turn to the slides. I think just to provide some framing, I mean, we've done, IFC invests about $56 billion every year. Half of that is in the financial sector, typically. And though we've put $500 billion within the SME, MSME space, the gap remains very high. They're still like $5.2 trillion, which is needed by entrepreneurs in many emerging markets and lack access to finances capital. So with a lot of these smaller companies, smaller businesses reporting that they're credit constrained, the barriers include that essentially they're usually in large informal economies. Think about India or Bangladesh, etc. Undeveloped banking infrastructure. They're usually regulatory challenges and geopolitical tensions, which Lourdes and Anne also referred to in many parts of the world, and low levels of financial literacy and awareness. So just to give you a couple of examples, in the Middle East, only less than half of the population even have access to finance in any form, or whether it's in mobile money, etc. In the Central Asia, it also varies, and very much it is dependent on poverty levels, but as well as how many large innovative companies go and invest in these markets, right? Like it's much easier to have credit or digital finance in a market like the US or China or India, where you have large scale as well as the telecommunications infrastructure, as well as investor appetite to do so. So just going to the next slide on this market, the region that we've spent time talking about within the report is varied. There's conflict in the Middle East, as you well know. There's macroeconomic and inflationary pressures in Central Asia and Turkey, as well as Pakistan. And then a lot of supply chain disruptions due to the ongoing conflicts in the region. Couple that with climate change, economic, uncertainty, and then as well as positive trends. So a lot of disruption in the financial sector space, fintechs coming in, digital banking. And so we spent a lot of time thinking through how do you increase scale, but how do you also disrupt traditional financial sectors, particularly the public sector, in being able to provide a larger amount of financing to entrepreneurs that really need it. And there are some who are very structurally excluded. They tend to be older people, the silver fox generation, as they're increasingly being referred to, younger people, women, and those who live in rural areas. So in Kyrgyz and Afghanistan, I just wanted to give a couple of cases. These are very difficult IDA markets, as we refer to them. They're affected by conflict, sanctions, etc. And we've been engaging with banks to see how can you do affordable housing finance? How can IFC help through providing financing, but as well as providing know-how like financial literacy or risk management, or helping them onboard digitally. In Afghanistan, in the last couple of years, as you can imagine, there's been a huge surge away from providing access to finance in women, but we've continued to work with partners to promote women entrepreneurship. And it's precisely at moments like this where you need to work with firms in the most difficult of circumstances so they can continue to be resilient, to be innovative, to be transformative in the sectors that they operate in. The next example I'll give is the MSME finance sector in Uzbekistan, where small businesses like this contribute to over half of the GDP. And the credit gap for these is about 11.8 billion. So these numbers are not small, even though these countries may be, the stans, or you may never even have heard of them or been to some of them. The numbers and scale of what is required is fairly significant. So there we've been working directly with the Central Bank of Uzbekistan, the World Bank, and various state-owned banks to really create like an enabling environment, whether it's knowledge sharing or bringing banks from Turkey or America or other parts of the world to provide investment and advisory support as well. And then really look at the financial sector holistically. So it's not just enough to invest in one company or one sector, but really look at how you can increase credit availability for many of these clients going forward. The third case study, and I'll be fast, I'll wrap up in a couple of minutes, is on agriculture and value chains in Pakistan, where limited finance and post-harvest losses for grains are estimated to be almost 40% of produce. So imagine a mango farmer almost losing 40% of whatever he has produced simply because they are not able to have the right trucks in place, or they cannot export properly because of quality. So there we've been working with the State Bank of Pakistan to promote the use of commodity inventories in warehouses, and creating electronic warehouse receipts. And this is something which is very evolved in India and other markets. And so we've been trying to see, how do you have innovation for these individual players? How do you help de-risk, right, for an individual farmer who lives in a rural area? And then the fourth case study is on Turkey. As you know, many of you may have seen in the papers, there was a large earthquake in Turkey a couple of years ago, which resulted in over 50,000. And, you know, I work at the IFC. We have over 100 locations. I'm speaking to you today from Istanbul, where I went to see the devastated impact of this earthquake. And even after a year and a half, entire communities have been raised. So there we went in and really tried to structure solutions with private sector banks to support reconstruction and disaster recovery, and had a flexible financing package to reach SMEs for 500 million. It's a drop in the bucket. You know, the damage caused by this earthquake was over $34 billion. So recovery like this takes a while. And the last case study that we've got in the report is in Kyrgyz, where we've been developing the credit infrastructure work. And essentially, it's not about financing, but building the environment to provide credit information, which will allow entrepreneurs then to be able to access financial services and then reduce their NPLs and actually build a credit history. So what have we learned? I think part of the lessons that we continue to learn is to engage early. It's not just enough to engage with the private sector or the public sector. One has to do all of them. Innovation and transformation requires a certain amount of patience and resilience. You have to go back to the drawing board every day, every month, every year to be able to design the right kind of products and approach. And helping build the enabling environment is just part of it. One needs to engage with every single, whether it's an institution or a farmer. And then, you know, I think the big tech companies offer a lot of lessons on this in terms of continue to have the innovative mindset, whether it's on product design or capital mobilization, the kind of partners that we engage with. And I think that lesson is something that we should all bear on a daily basis, right? Like to be resilient, to be practical, to go back to the drawing board, not to feel like we know it all, to be able to design for the future. So I hope you get to read this chapter. We're very excited about it. My team is online and happy to answer any questions once you have read it. And with that, I will hand over to Ricardo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Momina. And first of all, I want to thank the whole team at the Emerging Markets Institute for this big effort. And well, the contribution from my part is focused on Latin America, and the chapter covers the last 10 years of the evolution of the emerging markets in Latin America. And in the chapter, you will find how the productive capacities in the emerging economies in the region have evolved. And I cover topics in energy, in human capital, institutions, natural capital, information, communications and technology, transport, also how the conditions for the private sector have evolved, and finally, the structural change. It's not surprisingly that the best performer in many of these conditions is Chile, followed by Brazil and Mexico, but also with good performing from Colombia and also Peru. Another thing that I cover in the chapter, which is chapter number 9, I invite you to read it, is the dynamics of foreign direct investment. The main attractors of the inward FDI are Colombia, Mexico, and Brazil. And the main exporters of foreign direct investments are Brazil, Mexico, and Chile, which is very interesting and is in line with what Lorenzo was talking about, the dynamics of foreign direct investment promoting development in the region. This combination of different factor endowments, natural capital resources, and human capital, and also the attraction of foreign direct investment has helped in the region many different multinationals to become a really interesting competitors in the global arena. In line with the numbers Lourdes were sharing with us, in the Fortune 500 and in the top 500 emerging multinational companies worldwide, 42 companies are coming from the region. And it's very interesting that the multinationals from Latin America are competing in sectors like oil and gas, banking, retail, food and beverage, also in telecommunications. So in the last 10 years, the region has evolved. The emerging countries in the region have improved in many aspects. Of course, we still have some challenges, particularly in terms of institutional conditions that create certain or avoid uncertainty in terms of the rules of the game for the companies that are operating in the region, and also companies interested in the region to invest. And well, all the figures and trends are in the chapter. So I invite you to read it and to give my colleagues more space to talk. I pass the word to Shalene.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. And it's my third time cooperating with the team, which is quite an honor and a pleasant experience for me. My reporting today is Digital Transformation of Chinese Enterprises, a female leadership perspective based on my recent research. Slide 2, please. I'm interested in this topic for two reasons. The first is based on the reality. China has witnessed an explosive growth in digital technology that has become an inevitable trend to promote digital transformation across all areas of business and society in recent years. Meanwhile, China's female leadership is also rising, with the proportion of women in charge in business steadily growing. Digital transformation, or DT, as a strategic decision is usually made by the top management team. Is there any relation between the rising of Chinese female leadership and the firm's DT trend? The second reason is based on the contradictory understanding of female leadership. On the one hand, female leaders are perceived as risk averse. On the other hand, it has also been suggested that gender diversity among executives may lead to more open-mindedness and multiple interest concerns. Thus, TMT with female members can be more transformational. So the puzzle is, are female leaders more conservative or proactive in driving digital transformation within the context of China's growing digital economy? Slide 3, please. To address this issue, we first overviewed the background and trend of the Chinese firm's DT by 3 points. First, top-down design leading, referring to the policy guidance and social collaborative efforts. Second, infrastructure construction pioneering, referring to the construction of the information highway, such as 5G base station and broadband networks. And third, institutional development guarantees, referring to the establishment of digital governance and the standards of data security protection. This section includes facts, numbers, and significant policies and events regarding the multiple measures taken by the Chinese government and large businesses to promote DT. Slide 4, please. Then we take the stance as the Chinese firms to outline the pros and cons of conducting a DT strategy. To conclude, DT is a transformational strategy that will induce some resistance, but will also have positive returns in the long run. Slide 5, please. In section 4, we analyzed why female leadership in such a context can be more proactive toward DT, both theoretically and empirically. Theoretically, first, female leaders tend to promote fundamental changes and establish flatter organizational structure based on existing research. By applying information technology, DT can significantly enhance information transparency, reduce the layers of hierarchy in information dissemination, and speed up response times across all levels, which helps in reducing middle management layers. Second, the effective government support in China reduces the risks associated with DT, such that R&D activities related to DT are more explorative rather than the R&D activities related to DT are more exploitative rather than exploratory for most Chinese firms. Third, the soft power of female leaders facilitates resource acquisition and makes the transformation more achievable. Based on existing research, female leaders are more likely to build social relations through a learning approach than their male counterparts due to their flexible and diplomatic nature. Therefore, driven by the dual factors of undertaking fundamental changes and risk control, DT becomes the most suitable strategic choice for Chinese firms under the female leadership. Our team conducted an empirical study using the panel data from Chinese A-share listed firms from 2008 to 2021. The findings support this hypothesis, suggesting that the higher the proportion of female executives in Chinese firms, the higher the digital transformation index tends to be. In summary, we learned that female leaders are not always opposed to risk-taking. Instead, they are more willing to promote a moderate, risk-oriented transformative strategy under external support, which is in line with the interest of firms in VUCA era. Leveraging the strengths of female leadership more actively may be the key to balancing risk and reward in turbulent times. Thank you for listening. This is EMR 2025. More details can be found in our report. Now I will pass the word to Nalin Shingo. Thank you.
Thank you, Sholin. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning from New Delhi, India. I would first like to thank Lourdes and the Emerging Markets Institute for giving me an opportunity to be part of this report. India moved from being a leading contributor to the world economy in the pre-industrial era to being a fragile economy beset by famines and dependent on foreign aid at the time of its independence, 3/4 of a century ago. It has today grown to become the fastest growing large economy on the planet and is currently placed at 5th position by GDP and is slowly and surely moving up to number 3. It evolved from being the land of mystics and snake charmers to being an IT superpower, and today aspires to give its masses a world-class standard of living within the next quarter century, when it celebrates 100 years of its independence. The increasing literacy levels, opening up of the economy and the society, low-cost internet access, and the new confidence have unleashed the hopes and aspirations of its 1.6 billion people. The country embraced technology as a key lever for its ambitious vision and launched the Digital India Initiative a decade ago. The resultant changes, which have become clearly visible across the country in recent years, are no less than dramatic. The most important change that has been brought about by the Unified Payments Interface, UPI in short. UPI has changed the way India transacts, and digital transactions have grown exponentially in the 8 years since launch of UPI and are expected to touch 1 billion transactions a day shortly. The ubiquitous QR code is today visible on vendor carts as well as good stacks of footpath sellers, even in the remote areas of the country. Aadhaar, the world's largest unique ID program, started in 2009, has given over 1.4 billion Indians a unique biometric ID. It has provided a fast and low-cost means for ID authentication and currently processes almost 2.5 billion authentication requests a month. It has further enabled the Jan Dhan Yojana, the government program to provide no-frills bank accounts to the masses. This program has crossed 500 million bank accounts already. The UPI platform has unleashed innovations on a large scale in the financial sector, both by government as well as by fintechs. The Aadhaar payment bridge has enabled direct transfer of benefits under various government social schemes to Aadhaar-enabled beneficiary bank accounts. This is estimated to have saved over $40 billion in leakages from various schemes, equivalent to almost 1.1% of India's GDP. The Aadhaar-enabled payment system, AEPS, has helped people in remote corners of the country to carry out digital transactions through micro ATMs. This is doing over 500 million transactions a month. This and other systems enabled by the UPI, including FASTag for toll collection on the highways, Bharat Bill Pay for enabling utility payments through UPI, and many more, are continuing to make things simpler for the people. India's Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture, DEPA, is a paradigm change in the collection and use of individual data. Conventionally, large corporations collected customer data and then used it to sell products and services to the same individual. Instead, India's model empowers the individual to use their data for their own benefit. For example, an individual can authorize sharing of their goods and service tax returns, income tax returns, and bank account data with the digital lending agencies to get non-collateral based loans. The India Stack has facilitated ramp up of digital lending and improved access to financing for individuals and businesses who were so far not served or underserved. The recently announced Unified Lending Interface, ULI, has the potential to transform lending just as the UPI transformed payments. This reduction in cost and time and improvement in access to small ticket lending has huge implications for financial inclusion and growth, and could go a long way towards realizing the vision of giving every Indian a world-class standard of living. The shortfall in funds for MSMEs as well as farmers and others has already been touched upon by one of the earlier speakers. In addition, there are other initiatives in the pipeline, including Bhashini, a digital public interface for translation between any of the multiple languages and dialects used across India, thus expanding access to digital infrastructure. UHI, a unified health interface for making health records available online. Digitization of land records with geotagging, and many more. These are being keenly watched and will help take this ongoing transformation to a logical conclusion. Thank you for your interest, and I look forward to receiving your comments. And now I pass the floor back to Lourdes and Anne. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Nalin, Momina, Ricardo, Olivia, Lorenzo, and all of you for great contributions. We are going to now go to the questions from the audience. The first one is for Lorenzo. Do you have more details on the FDI in India? Geographical origins of this FDI? In which sectors are they investing in India? In private or public projects?
Good question. What we saw is that there has been some additional investment from industries, for example, car makers to India to basically support more investment in creating R&D for technology solutions. You know that India is has a strong IT cluster. So what we noticed is that there has been an increasing number of FDI from companies, industrial companies, that went to India to strengthen basically their ICT capacity, R&D in IT, particularly in technologies related to automotive, for example. So they use India as a destination to increase innovation in technology solutions.
Thank you, Lorenzo. There is another question regarding AI. I don't know, Anne, if you want to answer, or anybody in the panel. AI improvements should be easy to replicate, right? Even without the infrastructure, one could access the West's structures via the cloud. Anne?
Thank you, Lourdes. I am not so sure that AI improvement should be easy to replicate. Actually, especially when you see the large amount of investment that has been done up to now by the leading companies in this area. So I have a question mark about that. What I think is, at least for an emerging market point of view, is precisely in with models such as DeepSeek, for instance, or even those who are put out by Alibaba, for instance, or other Chinese firms, is that when they are partly open source, then it enables developer and researcher to build upon them and apply or adapt to the local condition. So that is very important for adaptation and use in emerging market. To say that they are easy to replicate, I'm not that sure, actually. I rather understand that this was more an issue of a barrier to entry, supporting the danger of having an oligopoly in this area. And as I said a moment ago, we are in uncharted territory because the industry is moving extremely fast.
Thank you, Anne. Momina?
Thank you. There's a really interesting, actually, recent IMF report on this, which says that, almost 40% of employment will be affected by AI. And actually, the figure is almost 60% in advanced countries and 40% in emerging markets, which makes you think that there are two aspects to this, that many of these countries don't have infrastructure or skilled workforces. So you're really going to re-equip and need to reskill people, especially in high-skill jobs. And so I think there are a lot of concerns about how AI will democratize, but it can also worsen inequality in emerging markets. So I think policymakers, private sector will have to, these companies will really need to be intentional about reskilling, but also providing the kind of tools needed to transition, right, from low skill to like something which is using AI. I think they also say that leaders will not be replaced by AI, but will be replaced by leaders who know how to use AI.
Exactly.
And that, I think, is very telling for emerging markets.
Thank you very much. There is also a question about Africa, if we are covering Africa in the report. And yes, we do cover Africa in the report. This year, for a number of reasons, we had a chapter on Africa, but at the end, we couldn't republish it. But yes, we need to cover more Africa because so many things are happening, so many good developments, mobile payments, unicorns, e-commerce, and of course, challenges, debt challenges, and others. In the case of Nigeria that is being covered, maybe you can say a few words, Anne, about Nigeria?
Well, yes, this year I mentioned that Nigeria is not in the list of the top 20 emerging economy, actually. And by the way, the methodology is explained in detail in the report. I did not go into it because it would have taken too long. But the point is that it's not even in the top 20 emerging economy. It's really out of the countries that we could consider as emerging this year, because the fall has been quite quite dramatic, and we take an average of 3 years, for instance, for the export revenues or GDP per capita. And what is interesting is that, yes, Nigeria, we mentioned that, used to be the largest economy in Africa, and now it's the fourth economy on the continent, and according to the IMF, it may even fall further to rank 5, definitely. We looked at Africa once in a while in previous report, especially on innovation or on e-commerce, because it's a very interesting area, and definitely there are changes taking place in the continent in some sectors.
Thank you. So thank you for the questions, Wafai, Hembib, Gavin van der Burg, and now we have also a quick question of Faye Stilandi. We cover Greece in the report? No, we don't, because we consider, okay, Greece is part of Europe, and we consider Greece a developed country, so the focus is always emerging markets. And then a question from Gustavo, and this is for the panel. What are the knowledge spillover effects from FDI by multinationals at the intra and inter-industry level? What are the trends? That is, how can the absorptive capabilities in emerging markets change in the recent years? I wonder, Lorenzo, you do a lot of work at the OECD on this subject.
Well, the spillover, can you repeat where exactly?
Yeah, so how the spillover effects, of course, the positive spillover effects from FDI in the country's industry, and also do you see the trends going forward in FDI? And maybe I will ask also Anne and Momina.
Well, I mean, in general, I would say that there are a lot of spillovers related to the technology transfer, the know-how, and the business that you can give to local SMEs, those that benefit from having a partnership with a foreign company. So these are some of the advantages, if you want. There are some regulations also that some countries are putting in place, what is called the local content, to sort of put as a regulation that a foreign investor has to sort of give a given amount of business to local companies to generate economic development beyond employment only. I would say that nowadays, with a bit the protectionism policies in general, there is more and more, I would say, focus on making sure that FDI creates a local benefit to justify the FDI, because the trend on protectionism might also lead to having less FDI to favor local industries unless it is seen as beneficial for the local economy.
Thank you. Maybe Ricardo and Momina. Ricardo, you covered this in your chapter.
Yes, I mean, in the case of Mexico, for instance, the spillovers are very, very positive. I mean, it is because the relation of the multinational companies with local suppliers is very close. So the investment, and not only in facilities but also in human capital, is very interesting in the case of Mexico, because of the FDI is focused on automotive sector, aerospace sector, and now to the cloud services, especially from Amazon. So I would say the absorbing capacity in Mexico is very good, and also the spillovers coming from FDI in these sectors.
Very closing remarks, Momina, Nalin, and Olivia.
Yeah, I think, I mean, OECD has a lot of research on this, so I don't want to repeat what Lorenzo and Ricardo have said, but I find two aspects to this which is interesting, particularly when you look at SMEs. I mean, there's an increase in productivity and innovation, but mainly at the SME level or at the base of the pyramid, it will be through knowledge and technology transfers. And that really determines where a lot of these multinational companies are investing. So it really is very like sector specific. And what we're seeing is it is great when it works, but the moment you have disruption in supply chains and things like that, that's when it stops working. So just a very concrete example of this was in Cambodia, where you had a lot of FDIs in terms of government workers. And the moment there was disruption in supply chain patterns to Europe and a lot of the things were not being shipped anymore, almost 500,000 people lost their jobs overnight. And so it can have benefits in terms of the knowledge transfer, but also one needs to be very mindful of the broader supply chain disruptions, particularly when you are going into these protectionist policies that is happening at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are on time. Great contributions. As I said, the report is a way where we want to learn. Anne and I want to thank you all for your contribution. The report is a space where we bring the voice of emerging market, economics and business issues. And as I said, we are already working on the 2025 edition that will mark the 10th anniversary of the reports. And we are again in the first quarter, finishing the first quarter of the 21st century. And a good moment to say, what is going to happen in this moment that we are changing paradigms, that we are scrutinizing FDI, that we are questioning open markets, that we are thinking, as Omina was saying, in more detail, what are the real positive consequences of globalization. The last 25 years have been positive, as we say, for emerging markets. What will happen in the next ones? Are we moving to a north that is more protectionist and a global south more open? What is the role of China? What is the role moving forward of Europe and the US? Very interesting, very broad questions that we hope to bring to life in the next report. Anne?
Yeah, just very quickly, Lourdes. I mean, definitely the message that you have mentioned. We are looking about the past quarter of a century. The issue is that we are right now at a moment of tremendous change in the global environment. Basically, international rule-based system is upended. And the point where the message we had is that perhaps emerging markets are in a better position today to withstand that kind of crisis that, of course, 20 years ago, precisely because they have gone one level up, if you want, in the development and growth ladder, thanks to innovation and technology. So that's one message we have. Will they be able to adapt? What will happen given what they have developed, the strengths that they have developed, the fact that they also represent a very big consumer demand potentially? I mean, this is a mindset that at least at the university, and Lourdes says it so often, we look at things from a Western point of view. But this is, half of the GDP, 60 to 70% of the world population, with the consumer demand coming. So perhaps our equation and the parameters have been seen differently. That's what we would like to message we would like to have in the 2025 report. And it goes along with what you keep on saying, Lourdes. In the academy, we keep on looking at the US and the European and the Western examples. What about the rest of the world?
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Looking forward to continue the collaboration. Thank you, the eCornell team. Chris, Marcos, and the team is always a great platform to share our work. Thank you again, and looking forward to the next one.
Bye.
Bye.